Hi, I'm Ebin. I'm from India, and today I'll be presenting about a small feature, render blocking status in resource timing. So the primary use case is to basically give a direct signal from the browser regarding which resources are render blocking. Currently, if the developers have to do it, they have to rely on heuristics. So that they can get rid of heuristics, we plan on providing a direct signal from the browser. So that is the primary use case for this. The main benefit would be for RUM tools. So the API is pretty straightforward. So we plan on adding a new attribute, render blocking status, to the performance resource timing object. So that would be a string, which it's currently proposed as a string, which basically two values. So blocking would indicate the resource that is potentially render blocking, and non-blocking would indicate it's non-blocking. So how it would be used is, again, once you get all the entries by performance resource timing, you could directly get the attribute from the object itself. So it would print out this render blocking status from the object. So the motivation for this is there was basically two previous works that served as motivation for this. The first one is that values for each resource that was introduced to Chromium traces. So this was done by you as part of, it was done in Chromium. It's only available to DevTools in Chromium. So in that case, what was done was basically 5 values were introduced. And in addition to the fact that it was blocking or non-blocking, more information was also passed through that value. So in the case here, one of the case you could look at dynamically injected non-blocking. So that would provide more information, as along with the the fact that it's non-blocking, it would also give information that it was added by scripts. Or in the case of in-body parser blocking, along with the information that it's blocking, it would say that it's really blocking content below it. So that extra information is also passed as part of this render blocking status. But in the current proposal, in its current state, these values, the first 3 values map to a blocking value, and the last 2 values would map to a non-blocking value. So this is it. So another previous work was later on, this was a boolean attribute was added to request concept as part of fetch. So this is basically a boolean. So it has just 2 values, right? So this was added later on. And in this case, the boolean specifies that if the boolean value is true, instead of saying that the resource is blocking, it says that the resource is potentially render blocking to make up for all the cases that we discussed previously here. So in this case, using the heuristics in the HTML specs, based on the heuristics, this boolean is set. And yeah, so we reuse that boolean. So instead of defining new heuristics based on the boolean's value, we set our render blocking status in resource timing. So whenever the boolean is, say, true, our render blocking status would be set to true. And whenever the boolean is false, the render blocking status would be set to non-blocking or non-blocking. So we are basically reusing the heuristics. So that's how our proposal works currently. And the spec changes are pretty minimal. Since we are using the heuristics on the render blocking boolean, we define the status based on that and then just pass it on to finalize and report timing. And finalize and report timing, again, in HTML, we pass on the value, and in fetch, we take the value and use that to create the resource timing entry. So that is the entire addition in a nutshell. It's a pretty small addition. So yeah, so I'll link the PPT in the chat, and you can look at the explaining on the PRs for the spec changes. And in addition to that, initially, since we started off with the Chrome values, it was a string having more information. So since later on it was changed to a Boolean value, would it make sense to replace it with a Boolean value? The only case where we could keep it as a string is if there was a chance that this could be replaced later on with something that provides more information, like the potentially blocking or the dynamically injected cases we discussed previously. So if there is no chance that the string would never have these extra values, it would make sense to just have a Boolean attribute instead of a string attribute. So that is something that we wanted to discuss and get your opinions on. Yeah, but other than that, I think, yeah, this is the proposal in a nutshell.
Awesome. Thank you. Stopping recording.